Thanks for having me here today, guys. This is just such an amazing talk as we discover carbohydrates, the top tier macronutrient for sports performance. And thanks for the induction. I'm your host, Jim White, and today we're going to go over some learning objectives to get us started. The first is going to be discovering the long-lasting benefits of carbohydrate consumption as it relates to all populations. Also, we're going to learn about the different recommendations and nutrition timing standards for athletes in order to properly fuel performance and recognize how to best utilize a variety of carbohydrates in order to obtain peak vitality. And as Doug said, I've been a spokesman for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics for 9 years. So I spoke on the nation's health when it came to food and performance. Also a certified exercise physiologist, and work with all different walks of life, from athletes to morbidly obese to women, men, young, old, to bring performance to the light. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic. And I'm here on behalf of Potatoes USA, who is sponsoring me to speak today. And I wanted to bring this up again, carbohydrates, and this time I highlighted the word top. Carbohydrate, the top tier macronutrient for sports performance. When is the last time you've heard of carbohydrates being the number one, the top tier? Has it been years? Maybe decades? Maybe it's been the past century. And why is that? Carbohydrates have been in the media for a long time, and they've definitely been sensationalized. And through a lot of the media, it's been a lot of fear-mongering of, why not to eat carbohydrates. So we have 3 macronutrients. One of them is protein, and protein has the health halo, as well as it should. Protein helps provide amino acids to build strength and rebuild muscle. It helps to strengthen the immune system. It provides foods that provide calcium and vitamin D and zinc and iron for the body for vitality. And then we have fat. The healthy kinds can decrease cholesterol. It can also help out with blood sugar levels and blood sugar level balance. And it can help with hormone production. But what about carbohydrates? Carbohydrates have definitely been loved over the last century. They've been hated and often demonized by the public. I feel carbohydrates are often misrepresented, misunderstood, and mistreated. So today, I'm going to bring you the real carbohydrate story. I'm going to bust any myths. I'm going to answer all the questions you have. And my goal today is to provide you, as coaches, the information you need to bring to your athletes on the science-based information on why carbs are important to the diet. And before we do that, I kind of want to have some fun and bring back the history of carbohydrates and how did we get to where we are now, where people are afraid to eat them. And it started 2.6 million years ago in the Paleolithic era. Out of University of Chicago, there's a study done showing that the starch in plant root tubers were amongst the foods eaten in cavemen. And I know with the paleo diet, most people believe that it's a lot of protein and fat, but there were starch there. And that helped with brain acceleration growth for over 2.6 million years. And then we'll fast forward to 1956, because we only got a 50-minute presentation here. 1956, the USDA came out with its Basic 4. This was kind of like the food guide pyramid of its time. And as you can see, the bottom says the bread and cereal group. 4 servings a day was recommended to the general public. Bread and cereal group. And it's funny how they just included those two rather than saying the starch group or the carbohydrate group. In the 1960s, carbohydrates started going into the athletic front. Athletes such as Wilt Chamberlain for basketball and Jim Brown for football and Muhammad Ali would often use food for fuel, and Muhammad Ali's breakfast looked like eggs, OJ, and toast. And for dinner, he'd have steak, potatoes for energy, and vegetables. And you're starting to see in the 60s where food started to be used as performance. And this was a great way to bring it in the light when it comes to the athletic population. And then 1972 happened. And this was when really the death came to carbohydrates in 1972 with the Atkins diet. I'm sure many of you know the Atkins diet from going from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. The induction to the phase was your first 2 weeks, 20 grams of carbohydrates, high amounts of fat, high amounts of protein, and vegetables. And in this diet, I'll read to you what wasn't included, what you couldn't eat. And that was wheat, spelt, rye, barley, brown rice, carrots, turnips, bananas, apples, oranges, pears, grapes, sweet potatoes, lentils, beans, and chickpeas. I don't know about you, but a lot of your athletes, to get them to eat a lot of those foods would be amazing. What was allowed was butter, cream cheese, bacon, and sausage. As a registered dietitian for 15 years, a lot of times we use common sense, and that always never made sense to me. The 1980s, sports performance, carbohydrate loading, I'm sure it's still around today, was popular, but at that time what was popular was eating large amounts of pasta right before an event. So for runners, or for football players, or for athletes before their event, just eat a large amounts of pasta. And that became really, really popular. Not as much how it should be today, and we'll talk about carbohydrate loading, but that was what came up in the 1980s. In the 1990s, carbohydrates are seen as addictive. And if you look at the picture here, you see carbohydrates, and then you have, some sugar-laden, fat-producing carbohydrates. So this is where I feel where the water got muddy, because to classify carbohydrates, most people, put the good stuff and maybe the stuff you should limit together, so people started avoiding them. In 1992, the food guide pyramid came out, and the USDA went from 4 servings that was in the basic 4 to 6 to 11 servings of carbohydrates. So that was great. The USDA saw that we needed to eat more carbohydrates. It's been researched. They provide fiber, they provide a lot of B vitamins for athletes, and a lot of energy. Then in 1999, Oprah, which everyone loves her, came out with the show Carb Addicts Unite. So what happened in this show, Dr. Keller and his wife, they wrote this book, and of course, the Oprah effect happened. Once this happened, a lot of people just got afraid of carbohydrates. So you can see where that media is building. In 2005, Americans are told to limit added sugars and eat more fiber-rich foods. So this was a good thing, because this is where it started to separate. People realized that there are your carbohydrates that are sugar-laden and high-fat that you got to limit, but then there are your fiber-rich carbohydrates that you need to eat more of. In 2011, MyPlate.gov came, and this is where it was a great tool. The motto was, make half of your grains whole grains. And this is where the message went from less refined starches and carbohydrates to more whole grains. And this is a great tool to use for a lot of your athletes. In 1990s to today, the low carbohydrate trends really are continuing, from the Scarsdale diet to the South Beach diet to the ketogenic diet, which is one of the most restrictive carbohydrate diets out there. So why have protein and fat taken over as the macro kings? And I have a comic here that says, I can't drink alcohol on a low-carb diet. I'll just have a couple shots of gravy and a twist of bacon. And I love this comic. But the one word that I see in here is I can't. And, I feel that in nutrition, especially when it comes to your athletes, you'll start seeing them, especially the ones that need to cut weight for performance. They'll say words like, I can't, I shouldn't. And, I think as coaches, as dietitians, as health professionals, we need to bring those health messages back and really promote eating positive foods and add foods rather than subtracting food groups. I had an athlete that started with me recently, and she went to a conference similar to ours, and I go, what did you eat for breakfast there? And she said, I didn't eat anything. I go, why? Well, she said they had bagels there. I don't eat any bread. I'm on a low carbohydrate diet. I don't eat fruit because of the sugar, and I don't eat dairy. So I said, you just eliminated 3 food groups. So we're becoming, in my practice, I've seen more anorexia, orthorexia, and rigid eating than ever. So, that's something we really want to watch out for when it comes to our athletes. So today, I'm not here to influence you. I'm not here to, try to get you to really, talk about something you don't believe in. We all have opinions, and we're all health professionals. What I'm going to do is bring the science to you. I'm going to bring the information needed so you can bring that information to your athletes to increase their performance. And first, we got to start off by talking about carbohydrates. Not all of them are created equal. We have complex carbohydrates and we have simple carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are polysaccharides, and what they are is they're long-chain bonds, and they have many monosaccharides attached to them. Now, starches have an alpha bond, and they can be digested. Fiber has a beta bond, so it cannot be digested in the body. That's why you don't count fiber as net impact carbs in the body. And then we have monosaccharides, and then we have disaccharides, which are a branch of two monosaccharides. And you can see what foods it incorporates in there. So how are carbs processed through the body? When we first eat, let's say, a piece of bread, our salivary amylase, which is an enzyme in the mouth, starts the digestive process. But most of digestive carbohydrates are in the small intestine. Pancreatic amylase begins to break down those polysaccharides into disaccharides, and then more enzymes start to break down those disaccharides into monosaccharides, which is glucose. Glucose goes through our body through metabolic pathways. Some is used by the brain and nerves, but a lot of it goes into our muscle glycogen. So our liver and our muscles hold around 2,000 calories of muscle glycogen. Our liver holds around 400, and our muscles hold around 1,600 calories. So let's look at it like your gas tank. E is when you're not eating any carbohydrates, you're at E. That's where you get sluggish, no energy, and when you're eating enough carbohydrate to fuel up your glycogen levels for your muscles to use for sports performance, that's where we want to be. If you have a surplus of that, it could get converted and altered into the fat cells and get stored into the fat cells. So that's why you want to make sure that the message is to moderate, your carbohydrates. You don't want to have an excessive amount at every single meal. Quality is so important, and I know this is an extreme example, but if you look at two carbohydrates that say a donut and a potato, a donut has around 14 grams of fat, 6 grams of saturated fat, and 12 grams of sugar, where a potato has half the amount of vitamin C you need, just as much potassium as a banana, and also has 2 grams of fiber, no fat. So as you can see, quality is so important. I'm going to be talking about that a lot. Also, we have to look at quantity. Unless your athlete is looking to gain weight or is looking to carbohydrate load for the week, we still got to moderate our carbohydrates, even the good ones. We don't want to eat an excessive amount at every single meal. So a lot of people ask me, what is a serving of carbohydrate? And as a registered dietitian, we have food exchanges. One serving of carbohydrate is 15 grams of carbs and 90 calories. And as you can see, here's some of the serving size. A slice of bread, we have a third of a cup of pasta, a half a cup of canned fruits and vegetables, a half a cup of starchy vegetables, and 3/4 cup of dry cereal. So that constitutes as a serving size when it comes down to it. But our serving sizes seem like they've been on steroids over the last 20 years. As you can see the size of a bagel, and now if you go to New York, the New York-sized bagels are up to 500 calories, so they're huge. As you can see the muffin from 20 years ago to now. So serving sizes are really large, and we need to pay attention to this when we're talking to our athletes. I'd be amiss if I don't talk about carbohydrate benefits. So the one thing that they do is they spare protein from being used, muscle protein from being used for energy. So carbohydrates are so important as that buffer. Also, they provide us energy. When we have more carbohydrates, our body is using that for performance. So we're in the gym, we're in the weight room. When your athletes are running, they have more energy for performance to lift those heavy loads, to increase their volume of oxygen, to get that energy to have a better performance, hence better performance during their sports. Also, carbohydrates give us energy. That is probably one of the biggest benefits that it does. So, as a registered dietitian, as an athlete, I was played basketball for years, also a bodybuilder and a marathon runner. And over 10 years ago, I started, testing a low carbohydrate diet. Everyone was talking about it, so I wanted to see what what all the hubbub was about. Why were people doing it so much? And I'll tell you what, I've never had fatigue when I was running. I remember this one day I was running about 7 miles, and then my 6th mile, I hit this wall I just never hit before. I've had low energy from not sleeping enough and from drinking too much caffeine before, but I don't know about you. Has anybody tried a low carbohydrate diet at times when they're doing long bouts of energy? You just don't have the brain function. You just don't have that energy to get through and push on. That's why they say hitting the wall. So carbohydrates provide that energy for our body. They also protect against disease. And I know with sports performance, performance is number one, but this is something for the kids and for the athletes we do got to look into too. It helps out with digestion, it helps out with constipation, and also helps maintain weights. Fiber is also really important. It's recommended that we need, for women, 25 to 30 grams, and for men, 35 to 38 grams of fiber. And half the population is getting 12.5 grams, what the average American gets on a regular basis. So think about that. Now you might say, well, I can get my fruits and vegetables, I can get enough fiber. Women would have to do 10 servings a day, and men to do 12 servings a day. And the average American is only getting in 10% of fruits and vegetables a day. So it's just not feasible. That's where grains come in and can really add in a benefit. So what are the recommendations? And I think this is going to really, really surprise you. The USDA dietary guidelines from 2015 to 2020 recommends that children, adolescents, adults, and seniors follow 45 to 65% of their diet from carbohydrates. That's about half of your plate. The American Heart Association recommends around 6 servings a day from the grain group and about 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day to get your carbohydrates. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, now if we look, they follow the dietary recommended index for carbohydrates of 45 to 65, and for patients in the hospital, especially with medical nutrition therapy, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, 45 to 65% carbohydrates. Now here we go for athletes. This is one of our athletes, one of our clients, Francina McCrory. She won the gold in the Summer Olympics in the 4x4. She came in, and you think an Olympic athlete would be eating a lot of great foods and high-end sports performance. And she'll be the first to tell you, she came in, she wasn't really eating any carbs. We started to elevate her diet with increasing carbohydrate sources, and her performance just accelerated. But this is the recommendation from the ACSM, 6 to 10 grams per kilogram of body weight, and then your own body, National Strength Conditioning, 5 to 10. So just put this in perspective, a 150-pound individual, in order to get that much for athletes, they have to consume 340 to 680 grams of carbohydrates a day. Sounds like a lot. You have to be really meaningful and proactive to get that many calories in when it comes to carbohydrates and get that many grams in a day. So just think about that. How are your athletes doing when it comes down to this? Are they eating enough? I see a lot of athletes skipping meals. And if they're hard gainers trying to gain weight, I find it harder to work with hard gainers these days than work with people trying to lose weight. Because if they miss a meal, 2 meals, 3 meals, they're just like going back. They're gaining 2 pounds, going down. They're gaining 2 pounds, going down. So these athletes need to have a constant flow of nutrients. That is protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And they need to focus on it. That message needs to be out there that you guys need to eat. You need to eat like it's your job. You need to eat every single meal. Breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. Be constant. I know their parents aren't going to be happy about that when it comes to the food bill, but they definitely need to eat. And this just shows that. Now, if we look at special populations, sprinters, about 5 to 6 grams per kilogram of body weight, they don't need as much because they're not producing as much energy as distant runners, which is 7 to 10 grams per kilogram of body weight. Cyclists, when it comes down to it, 60 grams per kilogram of body weight during exercise. Now, if it's longer than 3 hours, they need more, a little bit more. And then bodybuilders. I don't know if any of you have worked with bodybuilders, but there is not enough research, but there is some studies that has showed that 1 gram per kilogram before exercise and 0.5 grams during exercise can help out with sports performance, but it depends on intensity, it depends on duration of the athlete. So everyone talks about pre-workout, and where do carbohydrates fit in there? They definitely fit in there. The recommendations are to consume 1 to 4 grams per kilogram of body weight pre-workout. Here's some examples of what that could be. Greek yogurt with berries and granola, a peanut butter and banana sandwich, an apple with almond butter, a serving of whole grain crackers. Now, this is a personal response to your athletes, because some of them, they eat and they get GI distress. So you really have to work with them. I know a lot of athletes can have a full meal and go right out onto the field. And I know a lot of athletes that have to eat 2 hours before. So you have to kind of just, work with them on that. So there is around a 30 to 90 minute window before your exercise where you want to get carbohydrates to help out with sports performance. And 30 minutes before you would have a lighter snack, but from 30 minutes to 90 minutes, and then that's where you want this fuel to come in. Now during workouts, you want about 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per 1 hour to 2.5 hours in an event. 30 to 60 grams. And that come into as far as sports gels, sports drinks, energy bars, fruits. So it's a very important time to get in this. When it comes to 2.5 to 3 hour events, 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. So it's very important that they're getting this fuel on an ongoing basis. How about post-workout carb recommendations? Everyone's always heard of that 1 hour window. But research is changing. Now they're saying instead of that window, it's more of a garage. 12 hours after sports performance, we want to get in those nutrients. And that's carbohydrates, that's protein, and that is fat. But the recommendations are to consume 1 to 1.2 kilograms of body weight of carbohydrates 1 hour post-workout to replenish those glycogen stores. So for a lot of your athletes trying to gain weight that really had a hard workout, I would do something like maybe a 4 to 1 to 5 to 1 carbohydrate to protein ratio. So that could be anywhere from 100 grams for every 25 grams of protein that you're consuming. So this is a pretty big meal. It can be whole grain cereal, milk, recovery smoothie, egg whites, and potatoes can be great recovery, after recovery food to fuel the body for post-workout recommendations. So what about carbohydrate loading? We talked as one of the first slides that back in the 80s, it was eating a ton of pasta the night before. The only thing you got to watch out is a lot of GI distress can come when you're loading a lot of different foods the night before. So the trend now is 6 days before you want to start this process. The first 3 days, you'll start to taper the exercise, and you want to stay with a nice 50% carbohydrates. So that's half the plate carbohydrates. The last 3 days, that's when you want to increase to 70% carbohydrates. And with that, can have a 50 to 70% of glycogen loading effect. Just think, that's like a full tank of gas, and your athlete's sports performance will dramatically increase from that. There's no benefit from exceeding that 10 grams per kilogram of body weight when it comes to carbohydrates, especially even in glycogen loading. So just a little pop quiz. For you to figure this out, if you have a 150-pound athlete following an 1,800 calorie diet, how many grams of carbohydrates should they be getting that day? So how you would do this math is you would take 1,800 calories, and I kind of threw it off with the 150-pound athlete. So when you're trying to figure out percentages, you don't take that into effect. But when it comes into 55% of their diet, you take 1,800 calories, and you times that by 0.55. And since 1 gram of carbohydrates equals 4 calories, you divide that, and it comes out to 247.5 grams of carbohydrates. And this is what it looks like. You might say, wow, that's a lot of carbohydrates. How do I fit this in my diet? So this is an example of a day in her life. It'd be a breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, and snack. As you can see, the breakfast, lunch, and dinner incorporate a little bit more carbohydrates, and then the snacks a little less. And this is a constant flow of carbohydrates throughout the day to keep energy levels up, to balance out the sugar levels, and to really help out increasing that glycogen flow. It does get tricky when someone's trying to consume 600 grams of carbohydrates. Again, they're doing 2 cups of oatmeal in the morning. They're doing, 2 servings of potato at night. They're constantly eating along with protein and fat. So they got to work that into their diet. So what about low carbohydrate diets? So the definition of a low carbohydrate diet is 135 grams or less. And by the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, it's less than 35% fat a day. A lot of athletes think 135 grams of carbohydrates these days is a lot. And it's really not. That's considered a low carbohydrate diet. So it's important just to be mindful of it, that we need a lot more than what people are actually thinking and what it's talked about in the media. Some of the downsides of a low carbohydrate diet, remember it has that sparing factor. So when you're not eating a lot, sports performance goes down, your strength's going to go down, you're just not going to get the lifts that you're going to get, and you're going to be buffering to protect that protein when you are getting that protein in the system. So it has that effect. Plus, you lose water weight, and people are sometimes excited about that, especially athletes, especially wrestlers. But the truth is, 1 gram of carbohydrate holds on to about 2 to 3 grams of water. But this is an important thing. When we glycogen load, an athlete can gain 2 to 4 pounds before an event. And I know that you might say, oh, that's going to slow them down. Once they start producing fuel, once they start, starting in their game, they're going to lose that through sweat. They're going to lose that really, really fast. We want muscle. We want water weight. I don't know about you, but when I lose weight, I don't want to lose muscle weight. I don't want to lose water. I want to lose body fat. And I want to increase my muscle mass. And so that's a really important message. Also, a lot of fruits and starchy vegetables are sources of carbohydrates. So when you're eliminating them, you're eliminating a lot of vital nutrients in the body. Nutrients such as vitamin C, that's going to help these athletes stay in and not get sick. And other nutrients that are valuable for their sports performance. Not only that, it's difficult to sustain, causing fatigue, constipation, food cravings. These things are not great for athletes. So some of the myths of carbs debunked, and these are some of the big ones. Carbohydrates makes us fat. You see this in the media all the time. And I think we got to have a disclaimer here. Yes, if you're eating, tons of cookies and tons of processed carbohydrates, yes, of course. But if we put carbohydrates in here, then we got to change this out and put protein in there, and we got to put fat in there. Because for 1 gram of carbohydrates, there's 4 calories. For 1 gram of protein, there's 4 calories. And for 1 gram of fat, there's 9 calories. People don't believe that you can overeat on protein, and people think that you can't gain body fat. You can. It's calories in, calories out. So any of these macronutrients, if you're eating them in excess, you can put on weight. And in excess, you can put on fat. So if you're eating the right carbs at the right timing, that is not true. It's not going to make you fat. Carbs spike blood sugar levels. And the right carbohydrates will actually balance out sugar levels. So when we get grains throughout the day, portions throughout the day, and it's important when you do eat carbohydrates to combine it with protein. And it slows down that glycemic index, and it has a good glycemic load. So you want to get that in. You just don't want to eat a big bowl of pasta by itself. You want to put some meat sauce in there. If you have potatoes, you want to have some steak in there. You want to balance out for a number of reasons. For variety, number one, and make sure you're getting those macronutrients in. Carbs cause inflammation, and that's actually not true. When you're eating whole grains, it's been known to decrease inflammatory markers of C-reactive protein in the body. Of course, again, we're talking about whole grains. We're talking about complex carbohydrates. We're talking about those healthy carbohydrates here. Don't eat carbs before exercise. And we did talk about that it's an immediate response. It gives us energy. And it's vital, especially in sports performance, to have a great glycogen load to give us energy for sports. I hear this all the time. Fruit is bad because it's high in carbs, it's high in sugar. I've never had an athlete or a client come in to be morbidly obese saying, man, I'm just eating too many strawberries. It just doesn't happen. Now, with that said, you could overeat on anything. I did have a client come in one time and he was eating 6 bananas a day. So, but just think about it. One serving of fruit has 60 calories. It's loaded with nutrients, and it should be in our diet. I mean, the problem is 10% of us in America are eating them, so we need to be promoting them more on a regular basis. Carbohydrates makes you sleepy. Yes, if you're eating, again, high sugar processed carbohydrates in success, it can cause you to become sleepy. But by having the right ones throughout the day, it will actually give you energy. Bread and pasta are unhealthy and must be avoided. And I really feel bad for bread and pasta because they have definitely got nailed. And really, I don't know why. Maybe it's because bread could be a vehicle for some unhealthy foods, or maybe pasta, pasta Alfredo, when you're putting stuff to it, it could be unhealthy. But the bottom line is, even these days, you have so much variety. You just don't have to do white pasta. There's black bean pasta, there's chickpea pasta, there's whole wheat pasta. Now they have breads you put in your freezer that has lower preservatives, lower salt. So in this day and age, that message is flat, and we need to start changing that message because sandwiches, especially for athletes, is so important. It's versatile. Most schools offer it, and it's cheap, and it's a great way to get in the carbohydrates. Another one is white foods are bad for you. And this one, I really think we got to be careful about it because, foods like potatoes, onions, leeks, garlic, all these foods are white foods, and they're very good for us. So I think we got to change the message. What is white foods? And there are some studies show that after workouts, you do want a combination of high glycemic and medium glycemic carbohydrates, such as maybe some white pasta or a blend of white and whole wheat pasta to, your body's a furnace to get that glucose into the muscles and increase that glycogen at a faster pace. So just some tips as we close out here. Oftentimes I always talk to my athletes and, a lot of younger athletes especially aren't going to have the measuring cups out and they're not going to have the food scales. So you can have this toolkit for under $10. You can get, obviously your hand, but you can get a baseball, a tennis ball, a light bulb, and a mouse to demonstrate what a serving size of carbohydrates are. And people will really think, I just had a young athlete that's playing D1 basketball, and I had him in the other day, and I was showing him, a baseball, this type of serving. You want to do 2 baseballs for dinner. And he's like, I've been starting to do this, and it's really been working because they can focus on that. So it's a great way to show carbohydrate servings. Now, I want to show this example because I think this is one of the reasons why people, will put carbohydrates in a bad light. We have 2 different potatoes here. We have potato A, the loaded baked potato with butter, sour cream, cheese, and bacon bits. And we have potato B with olive oil, sea salt, and pepper. Okay, so potato A, 39 grams of saturated fat and 115% of saturated fat in a day. Potato B, 2 grams of saturated fat and 19% of saturated fat for the day. So quality is so important. Not that we can't have that once and often, and not that the athletes trying to gain mass can't have that, but we really want to get our athletes with the right recipes to move to that next level when it comes to health. And here's some great carbohydrate toppers, because toppers are so important. So when it comes to pasta, oats, potatoes, and bagels, here's some great things you can do. Has anybody tried overnight oats for their athletes? You can make 3 or 4 of them one night, and it's breakfast for 3 days in a row. But putting things like chia seeds, nut butters, dried fruits, protein powder, Greek yogurt, to really have that breakfast convenient is a great way to start. Potatoes, adding cottage cheese for more protein, mozzarella cheese, even chili could be a great way to bump up their protein. And bagels with hummus, nut butters, avocados, things like that to get in those healthy fats and those proteins to improve performance are a great way for them to get in more nutrients. So it's almost like a vehicle for a lot of different nutrients and a lot of calories. The one thing you want to teach your athletes is look at the label. The first ingredient should say whole grains. So if we see label 1, it says whole grains or whole wheat flour. If we see label 2, it says enriched flour bleached. So just because it says wheat on the label doesn't mean it's a true whole wheat. So we want to make sure it says whole wheat as the first ingredient when we're looking at things such as bread. And counting net impact carbs. This is a big trend right now. We work with net impact carbs for our diabetes athletes. But what you do here, it is a simple formula. You take your carbohydrates and you subtract your fiber, because fiber does not digest and absorb in the body. And then any sugar alcohols aren't counted either. So for this instance, there's 19 grams of carbohydrates, you take out the 2 grams of fiber, and you take out the 15 grams of sugar alcohol. So that's 2 grams of carbohydrates that have a net impact on the blood sugar. So when you're looking at navigating through protein bars, you really have to see this because there's a lot of sugar alcohols when it comes down to it. And you do got to be careful with sugar alcohols because over 25 grams, even up to 50 grams, it's in a lot of these protein bars you'll see in the market, can cause gastrointestinal distress. And that's not good what you want before a sports performance event. If any of your athletes are gluten-free, it's not a problem at all. There's a lot of natural occurring foods that don't have gluten, and you can see the list here. So they can definitely do it, and they don't have to just avoid carbohydrates completely. So just want to go through some of our clients that we work with, from the general population to athletes. This is our client Jean. Now she was a general client, but she was a sense athlete. She wanted to bike 100 miles. She ended up losing 30 pounds, and she never biked before. And over 7 months of training, she ended up biking her first 100-mile race. And one of her quotes was, "A higher carbohydrate diet gave me the energy I needed for my long endurance event." And we love making recipes in our studio. One of her favorite recipes was the 1-pan breakfast, potatoes and eggs. She ate it almost every single morning. And that started off her day. She would go into 2 and 3 hour bike rides. So it really gave her the sports performance energy she needed. Next, we work with a lot of overweight clients. This is Mark. He came in morbidly obese. And he comes in, he hasn't seen his kids for years because they live in Hawaii and he has vertigo real bad. He's on all kind of medications. He couldn't even go to work when I met him. He lost 100 pounds in a year and a half. He went off his cholesterol medications, blood sugar medication. He no longer has vertigo. He goes to work, and he just recently went to see his kids in Hawaii, and it's really changed his life. And that's not even his after picture. We had to do another one because he lost more weight since that after picture. And one of the things he loved his on-the-go herb red potato salad that really gave him the nutrients. He was eating 5 or 6 meals a day. And a lot of people were like, "How are you? Are you not eating at all?" He was eating 5 to 6 meals a day, but everything was in proportion to get him there. This is Grant. And Grant was an awesome athlete. He first started off overweight. He was 35 pounds overweight. He was a hockey player. He lost 35 pounds, but man, if you look at some of the stats up here, he lost, he ended up, his bench press went up from 1 rep max of 95 to 275. And as you can see, his squat went up from 135 to 405. Now again, Grant's about even 3 years older in that picture now, and he's in budge training with the Navy SEALs. And his quote was, "Carbohydrates diet gave him the mental stamina needed to get through his portions of budge training." I just saw him back when he was here for Christmas break at the gym. He was telling me how hard it was, but he's still constantly eating throughout the day and getting that fuel up on a regular basis. And he's just a whole different kid. When he first came in, he didn't even talk. And now he's very talkative. He has a lot of confidence. He's really, through fitness and nutrition, got him up there. And this is Renee. This is one of our clients that first started off as a vegetarian, but she wasn't eating too many carbohydrates. We put her on a high carbohydrate diet, and she also started to become a flexitarian, so that's more eating certain proteins. And she actually won the Walt Disney Marathon. And to this day, she actually now is becoming a registered dietitian because she's a believer in nutrition now and how it can affect performance on a regular basis. And this is one of her potato kale salads. She just loved doing like meatless days, and she would do this as part of her routine to increase her energy, increase her carbohydrates for performance. And I just wanted to close with this. Food is fuel. You wouldn't starve your car of fuel and expect it to run efficiently, would you? And when I think about it, carbs give us energy, of course. Carbs help to sustain us, and carbs can give us pleasure. It comes down to it. We need it for our body, to fuel our body, to live our best, and to do our best on a daily basis. Thanks, guys. Please come up if you have any questions. I'd love to answer any questions you have about carbohydrates. Thanks.
What do you think about like higher density carbohydrate supplementation for athletes, like Vitargo, Carbolin, those type of things?
Yeah, so I think it's key. Number one, for the convenience factor, because a lot of these athletes, they just don't have an appetite or they can't eat. So having some of the quadplex carbohydrates to get in, whether it's before or after, it's they need that sugar. I mean, it's like furnace going through their body. Throughout their performance, they need something with a 6 to 8% dextrose solution. That's why a lot of your Gatorades and a lot of your sports drinks will help with that. Just have to watch with some of those that they can cause GI distress. I would have them sample with some and see how they do with it. But absolutely, especially some of these hard gainers that need to get fuel in. I mean, they can get 2 or 3, 400 calories from that alone. It's a plus. So big pro on getting those in, whether it's pre or post workout.
Okay. I guess it's kind of outside the athlete realm, but what about you, just general population, for someone who can't get meals in? Would you use something like that, or is it too much?
If it's someone trying to gain weight or someone trying to improve their performance, or if an athlete wants to build lean muscle mass and decrease body fat, doing it after the workout, yes, I think it could be done in moderation. If someone's just trying to lose weight and they need a calorie deficit, probably wouldn't go into that realm. And I would use protein shake where we can add fruits and you can add different carbohydrate properties in that. So for athletes, I do a 2-to-1 ratio after the workout if they're trying to cut body weight and cut body fat. So it would be 50 grams of carbohydrates to 25 grams of protein. If it's someone like moderately that wants to build lean muscle, maybe a 3-to-1, 75 carbohydrates to 1 gram of protein after your workout. But if someone's trying to build mass, 4 to 5 servings, so that'd be about 100 to 125 grams of protein, carbohydrates to 25 grams of protein per serving is what I'd recommend post-workout for people, the average person, the average exercise goer trying to get to their needs.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
My question is on the amount of carbohydrates we break down per hour in a triathlete setting. Is it at 360 or close to 360, or does it depend on body size, structure, and who the athlete is?
So was it how much carbohydrates that triathletes break down per hour?
Right.
Well, it depends on so many factors, such as body weight, how intensity, duration. But when it comes down to triathletes, you're looking at right around there. So just think about that. That's a ton of money. We haven't talked about triathletes or ultra marathon runners or Ironmen. I just had a ultra marathon runner come in, just did a 100-miler. He ate a full pizza as one. That wasn't even the only thing he ate through this 100-mile race. But they need to be consuming carbohydrates. I mean, I think I showed it was for cyclists over 3 hours. You're looking at 90 grams per hour, but some of them can even go 120 to 150 grams per hour. Again, it depends on their stomach, because a lot of these athletes, GI distress can just slow them down and can affect their whole event. They need to test it out in practice runs, and I always tell athletes, never do it on the day of event. Never do something new. You want to be doing this months before and testing it out. Then, when they go into the game, when they go into the event, then go through with it. But yes, 360, I mean, that's a huge amount to recover. So that's so important. They get protein, carbohydrate, fuel in at that time.
Thank you.
Any other last questions? All right, guys, I'll be up here for a few minutes. Please come up. Feel free. Thanks for having me today, and enjoy your conference. Thanks.